Good afternoon, members of council, staff, and everyone in attendance today. We'll now call the regular council meeting to order on this Monday, December 18th, 2023 at 1 p.m. We'll begin with the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Kabamonagan is located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to First Nations for their care for and teachings about these lands. May we honor these teachings. Before we move to the approval of the agenda, there is a slight amendment that I'd like to propose, and that is item 6.2 that we include Tamara Easto, which is the chair of the Millbrook and District Food Chair. She's coming to pick up a check and she'd like to do it in person today. So if we can get a mover and a seconder to add that to the agenda, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Edgerton, all in favor, that is approved. There is any disclosures of pecuniary interest today? Seeing none, there is no closed session. We will begin with the presentation and item 6.1 from Robert Lockhart of the Rethink Group with regards to the Parks and Rec Strategic Plan. I believe Mr. Lockhart is joining us remotely today. Robert, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can. Over to you, sir.
Good. Thank you very much. Well, Mayor Graham, members of council, staff, and residents of Kabamonagan, it's certainly my pleasure to present an overview of Vision 2035, which is your new Parks and Recreation Strategic Plan. Next slide, please. Okay, so the purpose of the work has been to update the 2011 Parks and Recreation Plan and to provide guidance to the township over the next decade and beyond. The plan has been completed over the last 2 years in 2 phases. Phase 1 in 2022 focused on research, assessment, community engagement, analysis, findings, and conclusions, and resulted in the background report. Phase 2, which has been the focus of 2023, we continued with our research and assessment, did some more community engagement and analysis, and developed the recommendations for Vision 2035. Community engagement throughout phases 1 and 2 included a household survey last year, other surveys that were more focused with user groups, community groups, advisory committees, with focus group workshop, many interviews and submissions, and 3 community forums. Next slide, please. There are 5 key elements to the strategic plan. The first one is a long-term vision where we look out to 2050 and provide a snapshot of where you might be able to be at that time. And then we back up to sort of the next 10 years with the plan itself. And it would begin then with the belief statement, followed by the 12 guiding principles to provide the sort of foundation for the plan. And then the major part of the plan is what we call the strategic action plan. It includes the strategic directions. Under each one of those are many objectives, and the objectives are actions. And for every action, there's also information about who's responsible, who can help, and what the approximate timing would be of each of those actions. And then the final part are supplemental recommendations, which fit well into the structure of a strategic plan, but are really important to include to round out all of the things that we need to include in the plan. Next slide, please. So the belief statement, I'm going to begin with it. So we believe that an investment in parks and recreation, and culture in the township of Kabamonagan is an investment in the attractiveness and appeal of our community, the betterment of our citizens in our community, the growth of the economy, protection of the environment, and the contribution to climate change mitigation, which parks recreation can contribute to. Next slide, please. The 12 guiding principles, the first 6, the first one deals with financial sustainability. The second deals with community development and support of volunteers. The third one speaks to an active, healthy, and engaged community. The fourth one talks about accessible, inclusive, and affordable opportunities. The fifth talks about physical connectedness, which is really about the parks and open space system. Number 6, you complement wherever possible rather than compete, so you work with others. Next slide, please. The 7th talks about collaboration and becoming increasingly integrated. Optimizing facility use is number 8. Number 9 deals with clustering high-level facilities. 10 talks about locating for visibility, prominence, and access. Number 11 is being environmentally responsible. And the final one talks about supporting the alignment and hierarchy of other plans and strategies. And certainly the strategic plan for recreation follows very closely the strategic plan of the municipality, the official plan, and other documents that we reviewed very carefully. Next slide, please. So the four strategic directions. The first one deals with the delivery of service. The second one deals with parks and open space. The third, culture and recreation facilities. And the fourth, programming and community events. Next slide. So the first strategic direction, provide an increasingly collaborative and integrated recreation and culture system. And there are three objectives. One of them talks about continuing to broaden and strengthen the service. The second one talks about increasing the level of collaboration and continuing to do that, and gradually increase the level and comprehensiveness quality of marketing so that you can help people to understand what's available in the community, not only from the township, but from all others. Next slide. So strategic direction number 2, provide an increasingly enhanced and well-connected parks and open space system. And those words are very important, enhanced and well-connected. So the first objective is to establish a hierarchy of parks and open space, including community parks, neighborhood parks, and natural heritage open space, of which you have a lot. The second talks about alleviating deficiency in park and neighborhood parkland, particularly in the Millbrook area. And we have found a way to, if implemented, to alleviate all of those deficiencies. The second one talks about acquiring, protecting, enhancing natural heritage open space, and you have a lot of that, both existing and future lands. Because you don't have a lot of land or any land left where you could locate large recreation facilities like additional soccer fields, ball diamonds, or indoor recreation facilities beyond what's at the CMCC, there's going to be a need at some point in the near future to acquire a large park to eventually put all these facilities on as you continue to grow. Next slide. So the objective number 5 talks about rejuvenating and completing the existing municipal parks. The next one talks about designing and developing new parks. The number 7 talks about designing and engineering stormwater management properties as community amenities. Number 8 talks about disposing of any unsuitable or surplus parkland and reinvesting those resources back into existing and new parks. And number 9 talks about some parks and open space policies that are recommended, and we provide a lot of guidance within the plan to help with that. Some of them will become part of your new official plan, and others may become separate policies that you might want to develop to help ensure that you have a quality park system going forward. Next slide, please. So the third strategic direction is the biggest one of all, and it covers recreation and cultural facilities. And there are 24 different types of facilities that we've included in the plan. Every one has a provision guideline, which gives you some sense of how many facilities per thousand are going to be needed. That'll help you to evaluate what you have today and to project future needs up to whatever population target you want to set. And under each one, there are specific recommendations to address current and future needs. Now, I picked 5 examples out of the 24, just to give you a sense of what is in the plan. And even with what I'm showing here, I'm showing just an overview of them, but it'll give you a sense of what we're covering. So, for example, the first one talks about providing and maintaining pickleball courts to meet the recommended provision guideline of 1 court per 3,000 people. So the recommendations are to provide up to 8 outdoor courts at the Cabot-Monacan Community Center in phases. And secondly, to provide indoor winter courts in the proposed gymnatorium at the CMCC and summer indoor courts in the arena as you're doing now. Next slide, please. So another example is about recreational trails to meet, so providing and maintaining them to meet growing and changing requirements. And there are 5 recommendations that I picked out of the more than that are in the plan that speak to the range of things that could be done to continue to enhance this very important resource in your community. One of the ones I want to highlight is considering constructing a section of fully accessible trail, given the fact that more people in your community and our community are going to be in need of that, particularly as your population ages. The next example would be to provide and maintain water play facilities to meet a recommended provision guideline of 1 facility per 10,000 people. The first one we're suggesting should be at the Campamont Community Center, and you're already well along your way toward getting your funding in place for that. And the second one, sometime into the future, probably 10 or 15 years off, would be either Maple Leaf Park, Old Millbrook School Park, whichever makes the most sense at the time. Next slide, please. So the last three examples, one of them is going to be about outdoor tennis. So provide and maintain outdoor tennis courts to meet the recommended provision guideline of 1 court for 5,000 people. Some good news is that the public school board in the city of Peterborough is going to refurbish the 2 courts at Crestwood Secondary School in the near future. So that's going to provide 2 lit courts. The current ones are pretty well unusable at the moment, but that's going to change. And also at the CMCC, we're recommending that 2 courts be provided there, 2 lit courts, and they be provided one at a time as demand warrants and resources are available. Another example would be to provide and maintain a basketball or multi-sport courts to meet the provision guideline of 1 for 3,000 people. So as you head up toward 18,000, your target population, you're going to need to provide 3 more of those, and one of them should be at the CMCC, and we provide other candidate sites to fill up the rest of it. And the final one I'm going to speak to is providing and maintaining an older adult social and recreational wellness space. 1 per community is what's recommended, and the CMCC would be a logical place to put that in any kind of proposed facility expansion. We need to recognize that as we look out toward 2050, that the 75 and over population is projected to triple by that time. So it's an area of service that's going to have to be gradually increased over time. So next slide, please. So the 4th strategic direction talks about providing quality sport and recreation programming and community events. The first one talks about recreation, sport, and culture programming. The second one talks about tournaments. And the last one talks about expanding cultural tourism as facilities and organizations of the arts improve, and you're able to do that. Next slide. Now, there were 2 areas of particular focus of this particular plan, and one of them was the former Millbrook Arena and the downtown site, which we're now proposing become some sort of signature park or public square. And although we weren't asked to provide the details of what should go in that park, it's a job for next year. The research did certainly uncover a lot of suggestions that people had and a vision that's starting to emerge for it. And so I'm going to present that vision right now as a starting point, and of course the details would have to be added to it. So the vision goes something like this: to create a signature downtown park or civic square that will become a focal point and gathering place for the community. The park will be largely passive in nature and connect to the downtown commercial area, Old Millbrook School Park and the public library, the Millbrook Conservation Area, and the Millbrook Valley Trail Network to create an inspiring open space campus within the center of Millbrook. So that's as far as we've been able to go with it. The rest of the work to follow. Next slide, please. So the second property that we were asked to pay particular attention to is the Campamont Community Center, particularly the lands that are left over after the current building was put in place. And so we've looked at 2 things. We've thought out, 10 to 15 years and realized that there will be a need for some indoor facilities as resources can afford to move in that direction, and that this would be a logical location to locate things like a gymnasium or a gymnatorium, as we're thinking about it as, and that would be a facility that would be a gymnasium, a community event space, and a performance venue. So it's basically an enhanced gymnasium that can double for other purposes, because you're not going to be able to provide all of those things as special purpose facilities within your community. So can we find a way to provide some of it within a new facility that can do more than one thing? The Fitness and Wellness Center was widely asked for by the community and fits right in with the kinds of things that a community of 10 to 15,000 people could provide. Change rooms to support the gym and fitness facilities would be obvious. Some more flexible multi-purpose program and meeting space, a dedicated older adult center, storage, additional admin space, more public space, and more, and of course, mechanical and circulation. Now, with the outdoor space, we came to a conclusion that providing as many what I call small footprint facilities here as possible would be better than providing one large facility like a soccer field or a ball diamond. They're better suited in a different location in the community, either at Maple Leaf Park or in the proposed new recreation sports park. So we've suggested that since this is going to be a park that everyone in the community is going to want to use, that you want to put as many things here as possible to meet as many needs as possible. So we're thinking about things like a water play facility, which is already on your agenda to do hopefully in the next year or so. 4 pickleball courts that you would start off with, but expand to 8, because 8 is the perfect number that it's 8 and 16 are the 2 numbers that work best for pickleball. A full basketball multi-sport court, eventually 2 tennis courts, starting off with 1, 2 beach volleyball courts, expanding to 4, a medium-sized skateboard facility, expanding to a larger one as your population grows. Some sort of gazebo or shade or picnic pavilion, hard surface pathways to make sure you have good accessibility and a strong physical connection to the residential community that's going to be developing to the west. And additional parking is going to be needed not only for the new facilities, but to augment your existing uses within the community center. And so next year, in phase 3, it's proposed that more detail would be provided for this plan, and that we'd go from a block diagram to a much more detailed one. And also the indoor building, the indoor spaces would be fleshed out a bit more to talk about size and approximate location to one another, so that we could create an approximate footprint for the building, which then lets us know how much land is left over for the outdoor facilities and how they could be arranged. So next slide, please. Well, one last thing I'd like to mention before I leave the community center. It will likely take a while for all the facilities to be developed there. And given that there's a very high need from the soccer community for outdoor facilities, I'd like to recommend that the entire property be graded when first facilities are being considered for it, and that it be seeded and made available to the soccer club with small fields, portable fields, portable nets for the youngest age groups, that they would be able to expand their program on that property until more suitable facilities can be provided, hopefully in the near future. So that's one thing that wasn't in the plan that I'd like to add, that has been talked about, and I just didn't think to put it in at the time. So the funding strategy, there are a number of ways to fund a plan like this, which is certainly very costly, and not every recommendation has a capital cost associated with it. But the ones that do, you're going to need to find some resources outside of your own tax base. And there are lots of grants available. Some of them are standard and regular, like the Ontario Petroleum Foundation. Others, like federal provincial grants, come along once in a while, but you need to be ready for them. So you need to have a project all ready to go so that you can immediately fill in the grant application, and hopefully you can be successful. Development charges and cash in lieu of parkland associated with development is another source. A park reserve account is a place where you can begin to contribute money on an annual basis, and also put any cash in lieu of parkland toward future facilities and development that's going to be needed. Sponsorship and naming rights, you've already begun to do that, and much more of that can happen. Next slide, please. Community fundraising for specific projects is always a way that you can go. Planned giving is not something that municipalities focus on a lot, but it's something that you could explore, and other communities are doing that, and many nonprofit groups already do that. Your municipal tax levy is your annual contribution to capital. Municipal debentures are where you borrow money to do things. And there may be an opportunity for some proceeds of sale of surplus and redundant parkland. I don't like to recommend that very often, but if there is parkland that is not needed and the resources are required for elsewhere, it's something to think about. So it's sort of the final and last resort in the funding strategy. I think I've got one final slide. And we picked a few of the top priority initiatives to be implemented, hopefully within the first couple of years of the plan. Within the document, we've identified 20 or so that could be either initiated or completed in the first 2 or 3 or 4 years of the plan. But I want to pick on just 7 of them to mention today. One of them is to plan and design the proposed downtown park. The second would be to complete the planning design of the Cabin Community Center and the associated lands. The third would be to complete the upgrade of playgrounds to meet the new safety standards. And I think there's a couple more to go, and I think some of that is actually in your 2024 budget. Establish a committee of council to represent culture, recreation, and parks, like you have other advisory committees. Continue to explore opportunities for shared regional culture and recreation facilities. And this is something that's being talked about now by not only the city of Peterborough and some of the surrounding townships, but also by sports groups and other groups in the community. The idea of building facilities outside of the city where there isn't enough land in the city to provide facilities that could be shared. And one example might be a future, 4-pad ice surface that could be shared by your township and by others, rather than building single facilities on your own. So it's something that's being talked about, and you need to continue to sit on those groups and committees as they get formed to see what the possibilities are. Number 6 is begin to develop the remaining lands at CMCC. The water play facility is probably first up. And the final one I want to mention is to formally designate the highest priority township-owned non-parkland open space, designate them into parkland. And we identified dozens of properties that the township owns that are undeveloped. Some of them are natural heritage land, which you simply would leave as is, but you could designate as parkland. But there is some table land that the township owns. It could be developed into neighborhood parkland and community parkland. They're not big properties, but they're properties that are well located, and they're part of the solution for the shortage of neighborhood parkland, particularly within the Milton settlement area. So that is all I have. I think that's enough time I've taken. You get the gist of what the plan contains, and I'm certainly open to any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Robert. We also have obviously the staff report coming forward to provide more comments. Robert, if I'm not mistaken, you're sticking around with us to answer questions at that report as well. Is that true, or just want to confirm that?
That's correct. I'm here as long as you need me.
Okay. Any initial conversations or questions for Robert at this time before we go to the report? Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair, my personal take on a few of the things that I watched this process for the last several years, and for a few years now, there's been a small group of people that really want to see the old Millbrook Arena tore down. And I went to the public sessions after the online survey was done. A lot of the people that I talked to didn't even know about it at the time, and there's less than 400 that responded. But then we had public meetings follow that, which was great. I think the public needs to be involved more. But when I watched you work the room at those public meetings, the dialogue around a indoor pool or an aquatic center, as it was phrased, was kind of used like a carrot on a string to basically manipulate the results of the discussion around the tables. Then we had a vote here at council, and that was fine. 3 in favor and 2 against. And then we had the strategic meetings come up publicly after that. I found it interesting that the first meeting on Saturday that you announced that was the obvious thing that a population our size could not afford an indoor pool. And then at the Wednesday night, you stated the fact that the indoor pool or aquatic center or anything like that was never even on the plans. But briefly, you mentioned on the parklands for the outlying areas other than the village of Millbrook. And it seemed to be only a passing statement. And then again today, there's no emphasis on that whatsoever. Everything seems to be focused on the village of, which already has 3 of the best equipped, most modern neighborhood parks in the entire township. I still waiting to hear what the actual breakdown of households is across the township in relationship to the village of Millbrook. But I know from discussions with you, Robert, at those public meetings, you're under the impression that Millbrook is basically the focus and the emphasis because you feel that it's the larger chunk of the population. I'm not sure that's correct, and we had that discussion then, and I'm still waiting for follow-ups. But when I look at your, there doesn't seem to be any emphasis at all on improving the parklands for anybody in the outlying areas, even though I think they're probably the biggest chunk of the revenue stream for these developments. I don't know how the, in lieu of cash or whatever for the developments that have been going on outside of the Millbrook boundaries, how that's generated, what the focus is, if there's any. I know there's supposed to be some parkland set aside in Mount Pleasant at one of the subdivisions that have happened. For the people that are living in the outside areas, other than the village of Millbrook, all through North Monaghan and south down to the boundaries of Hope, I don't see anything in this plan that really gives them any feeling that they're going to get something in the way of neighborhood parks in their areas or any support whatsoever along that line. So I'm a little bit annoyed or confused by that. I don't know, just another thing that touched on your 12 guiding principles. Number 8 was the full utilization or optimizing facilities that we have in place now. And I see the Millbrook Arena this past summer not being utilized to its full potential. And I just wonder, in the direction going forward, is there anything that I can tell the people outside of Millbrook that they can possibly look forward to? Or is that money that's being taken rather than asking for parkland, which you alluded to at the public meetings, the staff has a fair bit of leverage supposedly to accumulate some parkland rather than just taking cash? And is that cash going into a common fund for the entire township, or is it just being used basically for the Millbrook development and emphasis on the CMCC? Thank you.
Robert?
All right, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Byrne. Now you've raised a lot of points. I've written them down here. I'm going to try to address each one as quickly as I can. So, concerning the community forums, of which you were at, I believe, all of them, and thank you very much for attending them all. I always try to be neutral and fair, and my job is not to is to be the orchestra leader, not the direction leader. So I try to facilitate sessions like that. I don't recall being particularly forceful in any one direction or another. The only time there was a mention about an indoor pool is when I repeated what the community identified as their #1 priority for a recreation facility of the survey, and that was an indoor pool or aquatic facilities in general. So that's simply reporting on that. Certainly not saying that it's something that the community the size of Monaghan could ever afford to provide. And certainly we have not at any point recommended that. But having said that, you can provide a water play facility, which is a much more affordable and highly used type of facility, and that is a direction that you're already heading in. So that's going to cover off on the aquatic side. And in addition to that, Peterborough is going to be providing additional aquatic facilities, and that's the best that we can do within a region. We have to think regionally. The Millbrook Arena, a lot has been talked about that. A lot of a study has been done on it. A decision has been made about that facility. It's still being optimized as much as it can. In winter, it is being used as much as it can by two groups in particular. In summer, it's not a facility that can be used well because of its physical conditions on the inside. It's pretty warm. It can be sweaty, and you have alternatives. So I think it's probably being used as much as it can, given its limitations. The community has spoken in terms of what they would like to see happen with that land, and all we can do is move forward with recommendations in that direction. Now, the final point you made, which is a very interesting one, you have a community laid out the way Cavan Monaghan is, with a large rural area and quite a few hamlets that developed over the last 150 or more years, close to 200. Millbrook has emerged as the largest center and is going to continue to be the largest center. When you think about how you provide any kinds of facilities, you end up with a hierarchy, whether it be medical facilities or whether it be recreation facilities. So you end up putting your largest facilities in your largest center, and you have smaller facilities located in your smaller centers. But the expectation is that you're going to have to drive to the larger facilities and provide as much as you can where everyone else lives. So within the plan, you will notice, I mean, you have the Cedar Valley Park, you've got Edgewood Park in the two rural properties. You're going to have hopefully a new park in Mount Pleasant. Springville, that development isn't providing a park right now, but that is usable. What we're recommending that one be considered for it. And we've certainly gone out of our way to mention that wherever possible within the hamlets, and if opportunities present themselves, that you try to create a neighborhood park in each one of them. Now, it may not be possible, but it's certainly something to shoot for. In addition to that, there will be a lot of natural heritage land within the rural area, the potential for trails, in addition to the current trail system, the Millbrook Valley Trail System. And so there are opportunities. And as you move up into the northeast, there are facilities on the edge of Peterborough that are provided commercially that are also available to your township. So given the nature of your township, the way its settlement pattern is now and the way it's going to be in the future, the kind of plan that we put together, I think, addresses the very nature of your community in the most efficient and effective way possible. So that's the best that I can do at this time. And it is a strategy. There's lots of room to make changes in it over time if there needs to be. And I see it as a framework to move forward with, and you tweak the edges of it as you go. And hopefully, if there are better ideas that come along next year and the year after and 5 years from now, that they can be added to the plan in a way that makes sense. So that I hope it helps to answer your questions. If there's any follow-up, I'd be happy to respond.
Thank you, Robert, for that explanation. Other questions, members of council, before we move on? Deputy Mayor Huntley?
Through you, Chair, to Mr. Lockhart. I guess not so much a question, but more, thank you for putting this together. I know it's been a long and onerous project for a couple of years now. It's a very detailed document that it's going to take some time for everybody to unpack and digest. But I did see a lot of great recommendations, including a lot of the satellite communities and parks that exist throughout the township. So it's good to see all of that in there and all that addressed. And I know over time, I doubt we'll get to everything in that document. And as you mentioned, I'm sure things will get added over time as well. But at least now we have the foundation and we start moving forward with this. So thank you, Mr. Lockhart, for all your work and everything that's gone into this.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm just echoing Deputy Mayor Huntley's comments. Robert, it's been a long road and lots of input and management on your end. So we appreciate the support and guiding us thus far. And yeah, absolutely. Obviously, there's a lot. It's a pretty comprehensive report. So there's a lot of assets and discussions and opportunities in that report that will be both this council, but a lot of future councils' opportunities to sort of dictate and determine where the investments go. And obviously, as you alluded to, the federal and provincial grants and other opportunities for funding will also have a lot to say about that too. But thank you for the presentation. Look for a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation. Councillor Natchoff, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. We are now on to 6.2, which is our check presentation. I believe Tamara is here. And so, excuse me, we'll just briefly, I just wanted to mention, so the check presentation is to Tamara Easto, who is here with us today. And she's the new chair of the Millbrook and District Food Chair and this is our $2,500 contribution from the township and council towards the local food share. So I'm just going to go over to the side and we can take a photo there. And thank you for all your hard work, Tamara. If you want to make a comment, sorry. Tamara, I might make sure you go to the podium there and just hit that button.
Sorry, I don't know the right procedure. I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the food share. Our usage has increased 68% this year. As most people know about food insecurity around the world, we're also victim to it, unfortunately. So this has become very, very helpful for us. We appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you for members of council for that, and thank you, Tamara. We'll now move on in the council meeting. Next up is our delegation from Rennie Lowe's, read the proposed cell tower in Mount Pleasant. Mr. Lowe's, right forward, and so as soon as I hit my mic off, you just hit that gray button.
How's that? So just to introduce myself, I'm Rennie Lowe's. My wife and I own a property that's 2 farms east of where this proposed location is. We have about 61 acres of deemed wetland in there of the Cabin Swamp. Want to thank you for having listened to the people from November 20th delegation, having received information then and reviewed the information. We have further signatories that since then, whoever wants this, I'll hand to. But so the particular property that is the proposed site, it's adjacent to a wetland that is mapped but unevaluated. I know that particular location. I cut hay on that field. I don't cut hay on the edges because it's wet. I don't go into there. And where 2 of the guy wire anchors are located is even lower. So it's quite a low, wet area. Some of the concerns are for the unevaluated environmental impacts of this particular area. We don't know what will happen. There's also the waterfowl impact. There's not been studies done on that. Best Pond is one of the largest sheets of water for migratory fowl in that area. And as we all know, troubles flow downhill. So we don't know what can end up in the Cabin Swamp. What we're proposing is to relocate this to 765 Hayes Line. That location is high and dry. It's a gravel pit. It's 70 meters higher than this particular location. So being a gravel pit, it's already had lots of studies done. The owner is aware of it, quite agreeable to it, and in fact has other properties which he has cell towers on. So he knows the process. Being that much higher, it could either provide better coverage or lower tower and accommodate the same. So what we're asking is, would council consider supporting this change of location? And if that's unable to do, just curious to know the technical reasons why that location couldn't work. And of course, we'd like to open up to council if there's any questions that myself or other members of the delegation could answer. That's it, nice and quick.
Thank you. Thank you for that. With regards to the subject of relocation itself, Ms. Ellis is here today. Ms. Ellis, if I'm not I just want to make sure we understand, if I'm not mistaken, any sort of comments or reconsideration for other solutions is really the township has no influence or jurisdiction over influencing locations or suggesting certain locations but what we can do is be the conduit to get any opportunities for consideration to the Spectra Point entity itself. I'm not sure if that's been done, but maybe you can speak to that process so we can provide Mr. Lowe's and maybe the group that information if they don't already have it, so that could be considered or would be considered.
Mayor Graham, to members of council, members of the audience. Township staff did contact Spectra Point with the proposal for the tower to be relocated at 765 Hayes Line. We did get a written response to that inquiry on our behalf. They've indicated that they appreciate and acknowledge the proposal for an alternative tower location at 765 Hayes Line. After careful consideration, they explored the feasibility of relocating the tower and consulted with both Rogers and the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, or EORN teams. Regrettably, they are unable to proceed with the suggested tower location due to its distance of 2 kilometers from the original nominal site and its proximity to the existing tower CO228, which is illustrated on a figure that I have before me. Furthermore, the location of 765 Hayes Line falls outside of the designated search area. That's the information we have to date based on the proposal of area residents.
So because we've received that, but I'm assuming maybe Spectra hasn't circulated that, and I don't know if Spectra's received the public request for that sort of opportunity. If is that response or that in paper response, if I understand it was a formal letter, if I'm quoting you correctly, is that public document that could be shared, or could we ask Spectra to circulate it to Mr. Lowe's and maybe the group for confirmation, just so there's a transparent understanding of the analysis that was done? Is that something we could ask Spectra Point to do, or are we able to just share it on, you know, directly from us? I just don't want to overstep.
To you, Mayor Graham, members of council, members of the audience, unless the clerk's department sees any reason not to, excuse me, I have no problem sharing the information. There's no proprietary or specific information about land ownership or anything. All of that information is already owned. There is a map attached to it with a coverage map showing where the location of the other tower is, which looks to me to be up close to Highway 7 in the city of Kawartha Lakes. So we can certainly, at council's direction, include this in any correspondence moving forward.
Ms. Page, is there any clerk related components or issues with that?
Through Mr. Mayor, no, there's not. And for transparency, we just read it out loud live on YouTube, so everybody knows.
Very good. Very good. So we have the contact information for Mr. Lowe's, and we can circulate that, and he can be free to circulate that to any of the individuals that have their contact information as well. Is that meaningful? Okay, questions? Sorry, he's just invited. Councillor Byrne has a question for you, Mr. Lowe's, if you would appease.
Yes. Sorry about that. I wasn't sure if more people were going to speak or how we're going to do this. So I know early on in this process for use as a group, there was an issue early on about the radius that should be notified about anything along this lines for a cell tower. I'm thinking that you probably came up with some kind of consensus of what that radius might be. I was curious if you approached any of the people around the gravel pit out at Hayes Line in that same kind of radius to see what they would think with the information that you have gathered over the last several months. If you had any feedback from that group. I know Daryl Drain doesn't live out there, so him making money off that pit is a no-brainer for him. But the people that already live near that pit are already impacted by the gravel concern, as well as, I don't know about the dynamics, but there's so many feet radius to the next township, which is Kawartha Lakes to the north, which would impact things greatly on that basis of moving it. I just wanted to know if you had come up with some kind of what you would deem a proper radius to be notified if anything like this comes up in the township moving forward.
We didn't contact people specifically around there. We felt that that would be the same radius. In the report from Rogers, it's 276.5 meters is the radius, which I'm not sure if it leaves the farm, that particular farm. The concerns, nobody's going to be happy with it located. The concerns are, this is sitting on very low land. You can see open water nearby. This other location's high and dry. So that's one of the major concerns. It's an unevaluated wetland, and anybody looks at a map, you can see how close this is. So that's one of the major concerns.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming, Renee. We'll make sure we circulate that from Ms. Ellis, so you'll look forward to that. No other questions. We'll look for a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation. Councillor Byrne, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. I'm just looking in the audience. I see a number of individuals that were here last time, and I made the mistake with regards to the procedural bylaw because of the lots of moving around parts of that meeting. So there were a few individuals that didn't get the 5 minutes Q&A, and if any of those individuals would like to speak, if council is amenable, I'd like to invite those individuals who weren't afforded that opportunity their 5 minutes now, if that's okay. I don't see any objections. Anyone wishing to take up that? We're looking for the 5 minutes for questions with regards to council. Yes, correct. That's the intention. So you each be given your 5 minutes that wasn't awarded to. So the clerk will take notes there. Mr. McWilliams, if you just state your name for the record, I'm sure the clerk will take it down and we'll go from that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Dan McWilliams, 1131 Hayes Line, and I thought for sure that we had a ringer here in regards to coming up with this petition, because we got a family of the Lowe's family that spent 200 years of roots in this community. And I'm just thankful that Rennie took the time to come out today to sort of let his voice be heard. And well, not only Rennie's voice, but over 100 and some other residents in our community have said, hey, we're not against this cell tower. What we are against is the location and the size of this cell tower is, as opposed to what is out there today. I say we see a number of them when we leave this building. There's 4 of them looking you in the face. I mean, but down here there's 150 people looking at these things. They're over that have said no to this particular thing. We've concluded just here, and I don't want to, I'm indulging your worship. I hope I'm not overstepping my conversation here, but it's not what we know about the locations of what we don't know. One report's been done. I see it. There's one in our files here. It's all got to do with arborists coming in and tell us how many trees they're going to cut, how many of this they're going to cut, how many of that they're going to cut. I get that. That's the kind of report we're looking for to know about this location. And I'm talking to the farmer that's been here or farm family's been here for that length of time. They know that that valley, they know the base, they know the water issues that we have there, all the concerns. And again, as I say, the group here is not here to look at saying no to a cell tower. We're amenable to that. I think it's the location that we're having trouble with, and the size in the cabin in the township itself. Just one last thing, as it doesn't take a lot when I look at it, but this report, I think there's a page on that report. I don't know if this is Miss Ellis's report or not, but it's in respect to page number 4 of 226, figure 1. Is that up here? Page number 4 of your report. I think it's on there. If I can just look at the planning report. 54. I don't know, would that pull up on that for me? Just as I end, just before any questions, if anybody has any questions. Show up on the screen. But the question, folks, is that if you look at the picture says a picture's worth more than 1,000 words. If I look at the picture of this on that particular page, it shows the exact picture is the spot. This picture in your report that shows the report of where this cell tower is going to be located. I mean, we've all been out in the bush, we've all walked. This report shows the water line on the trees. This report shows the bare roots that are there from water infestation that's around these trees. I'm just typically looking at the fact that I talk about what we don't know about the location. And I think really, notwithstanding the fact that you're putting a tower there, you're putting it in the wrong location. If you look at that alone tells you. You can see the water damage already to the roots and the trees that are there, and the water lines on the trees, which is telling me that you're in a PSW, which seems to mean nothing to the federal government, but we have them in our own province, but nobody wants to regulate, or nobody wants to go by what the PSWs are saying. And again, today, as I sit here, where I live and where Rennie Lowe's has indicated that marshland, UR is sitting in the PSW. There's no question in my mind. But anyway, that's my comments. If anybody has any questions, I certainly appreciate.
Questions, council? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. McWilliams.
All right, I completely unprepared because I didn't expect to speak today, so I was trying to script my own questions as I was. Yes, it's Jessica Monk from Best Road. I have a view from my front door across Best Pond to the site. So I'm 600 meters away from it. Half of that distance is across the pond. So we're very familiar with the environment on the pond. Sorry, I just lost my list here. Okay. One thing I understand a lot, because I've campaigned with politicians, I know the pressure at the door when you're talking to people and you hear what they want. And I understand that people were saying at the door during this last campaign that they wanted better cell service. But I'm pretty sure that this wouldn't have involved a discussion about, well, if better cell service means that we're going to put up a 90-meter tall tower in the middle on the edge of a wetland environment. Is that what you want? What we found through our petition is that there are a lot of people who do not want that. And I hope you consider that in your deliberations, because given the lack of consultation before this and the consultation we've done, there obviously is some concern in the community about this. My second by the seat of my pants question is, what is the downside to council not providing concurrence? And I was at the last meeting and you said that you had concerns about it and your approach was going to be to write a letter to, I guess, Industry Canada, and provide concurrence with conditions. But once this leaves your hands, you have no further influence. And I understand that not concurring is not a massive amount of influence anyways, but why not use the power you have to say, we don't concur with this because we don't have all the information we need to be secure that this is a good decision. And my third, off the top of my head question was about the lack of the official wetland designation when we know that the boundaries, I'm not articulating this well because I'm not prepared, but we know that we know that it's a wetland, but the boundaries haven't been declared. I don't understand why that doesn't concern you more. And to me, it feels like for the consultant, it's a useful loophole to get this ahead when they have no further alternative, and the natural heritage is going to pay the price for it. And the community members who love this area, because I see them walking down the road regularly to look at the pond and to look at the wildlife there, I feel like they're the ones who are going to pay for it. So I don't understand why you don't share our concern about that. So I'm sure I would have had more had I had a better chance to prepare.
Yeah, so just for clarity on the note of concurrence. So the concurrence isn't conformity, because our conformity of our local plans, policies, or bylaws, or zoning does not have any relevance on a federal jurisdiction issue, which is telecommunication. Concurrence in this regard is, do you have a policy, and has the proponent, Rogers and Spectre Point in this case, listened to and read your policy and demonstrated evidence to pursue and fulfill the components of your policy? The policy is just the antenna township policy. It's not our bylaw, it's not our zoning bylaw, it's not the provincial designation of a provincially significant wetland. None of those have jurisdictional or influence or exclusivity over the federal jurisdiction of this issue with regards to telecommunications towers. So there, in my recollection or in my review, I've only found 2 municipalities in the country that have issued a letter of non-concurrence, and neither have eliminated the erection of towers at those 2 sites in those 2 locations, because they weren't concurrent because of the policy that was there was followed. So the concurrence doesn't have relevance or matter on us. And I think to fairness to council, I think a lot of us do share a lot of the concerns. The issue is, even with the situation of non-concurrence, there is no secondary lane for consideration with the province. They need a letter from us confirming that of what's gone on, that the township's aware. Whether it says concurrence or not concurrence, I don't think it has any relevance on moving forward, other than they'll look for, well, why isn't it concurrent? And the issue is that there is no reason within our jurisdiction that it isn't concurrent. So that's just for clarification, but go ahead.
See, it's my recollection, and I'm a little, again, I wish I revisit it, but I thought there were things that our policy required that were missing from their submission, such as a detailed explanation of the other sites that they investigated and why they didn't meet the standard. And there's another one, and I just forget it right now. It was something that the report said that they hadn't provided, but staff were confident that they'd done their due diligence or something. And I thought that the information was missing. So there's at least 1 and possibly 2 cases where there was information required by our policy. So the policy in effect would not have been followed.
Ms. Ellis, would you like to speak to that? I mean, it is covered in your report, but I think if you could speak to it for the delegate, that would be appreciated.
Through you, Mayor Graham, to members of council, members of the audience, staff do have regard for our policies in both the antenna policy, and there's a list of criteria in the township's official plan. In this particular case, because it is a matter of federal jurisdiction, the standard policies that we are normally regulated under the provincial jurisdiction don't apply. So the policies in the official plan are there for guidance only. They're similar to what is in the antenna policy. So we have pressed Spectra Point throughout this process. I can confirm for everyone. From the moment we did pre-consultation, we were concerned about the environment. So please do not leave this room today thinking that we have total disregard for the beauty of Best Pond, the Cabin Swamp, and the role it plays in the health and well-being of all of us. So please know that. We did ask them right off the bat to move the tower away from the wetland. So it was originally located closer. We did ask for the arborist report, and following the last November 20th meeting, when you expressed concerns about migratory birds, about the wetland, et cetera, Mr. Wilkinson from our office did do a site visit. And if I could ask the mayor's indulgence, if Mr. Wilkinson could offer a few comments from that detailed site visit, that may prove to be helpful.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, rest of council and the members of the audience. I did attend the site after hearing some of the words that were present at the last meeting. For a little bit of background, I used to work at Autonomy Conservation, and I'm familiar with wetland valuations, having been in the field for a number of years. While I did not see the water lines on the trees, I can tell you that the vegetation noted in the arborist report are upland vegetation. I measured out approximately more than 60 meters away from the site where the staked marked in the field to what would be a lower elevation to where the wetland vegetation would be. This being December wasn't optimally helpful, but the upland vegetation and the field that was present there would note that it's not in the wetland proper. I am open to that, but hopefully that gives you a semblance of that this report has given some mitigations that would protect most of the wetland there. Thank you.
Ms. Ellis, do you have something else, sorry?
To you, Mayor Graham, members of council, nothing more at this time.
Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, there are other lands that are higher in the radius originally, but you have to have a willing host. The one thing I would like to find out, and maybe, I don't know, the 3-year clause for the expiration of the concurrence agreement. What is that about? I just don't understand why there'd be a termination.
So because of the requirement for consultation and the policy and et cetera, it kind of suggests as though if you're not going to move forward with the site to address the issue, you don't get permanent carte blanche approvals for towers everywhere that you can just sit on at your will. That you actually, if it's required to address the issues with coverage, you need to do it within a 3-year period rather than keep people waiting or disrupt anything. And there's also contractual agreements with the landowner as well, that they're, they've entered into an agreement for revenues to be shared from the site. And the expectation is that, well, you're going to get the construction done in that 3-year horizon. You're not going to keep this property owner on pins and needles or delay them from recouping revenues in your agreements with them because you haven't erected a tower. But that's, Ms. Ellis, is there anything in addition that I've neglected from that?
Through Mayor Graham to members of council, no, that is correct. And I believe the 3-year limit is a federal government limitation.
Quick question. Is the buffer for a wetland 30 meters or 50 meters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, council, and the rest of the public. In the case of a federal project such as this, there is no wetland buffer to speak of. They don't need to have regard for it in that way. In a standard Planning Act application in this area, it would be 120, which is just a catch-all to do an environmental assessment report. And then through that, it would be a 30-meter setback to the wetland.
And again, this comes from my not being prepared to speak today. Was there a requirement in the report, in the application for a wildlife assessment or wildlife survey?
Through you, Mayor Graham, to members of council, members of the public, no, we did not ask for that.
Any other questions? Seeing, I don't believe do we need a motion to receive the 2 additional delegates? So can I get a motion, Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? Those are received. Thank you, Gold. don't see anyone else, so thank you for all of that. And Council for meeting me, allow me that mea culpa with the process, and apologies for that issue with the last meeting. With that, we are through the delegations and we'll move on to 8.1 minutes of the regular meeting held December 4th, 2023. Any issue with regards to the contents of those minutes? If not, we'll take a mover and a second for the minutes be approved as presented. Councillor Byrne and Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. Next, we have the 8.2 minutes of the special council meeting held December 7th, 2023. That the minutes of the special meeting be approved as presented. Any issues with those minutes? If not, we'll look for a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Byrne, all in favor? Is approved. Lastly, we have our minutes from our Millwood Valley Trail Advisory Committee meeting held June 26th and September 22nd. 2 sets of minutes approved as presented. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Natchoff, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. We are on to reports. Report number 1 is 10.1 Parks and Facilities 2023 Vision Parks and Recreation Strategic Plan. I believe Mr. Allison is speaking to this, but as mentioned, Council, we do have Robert Locker online as well. Chris, over to you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I would like to first off thank Robert Lockhart of the Rethink Group for his presentation today, along with his 2 years of dedicated work developing Vision 2035 Parks and Recreation Strategic Plan, which replaces the current outdated 2011 Master Plan. This plan provides a guiding tool moving forward that offers structured reference, giving council and staff opportunity to outline and prioritize decision-making, both presently and in the future. I have before you Parks and Facilities Report 2023-07 Vision 2035 Parks and Recreation Strategic Plan. The recommendation is that council receive Vision 2035 Parks and Recreation Strategic Plan draft report.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. Questions with regards to the contents of the report? Obviously, and again, I mentioned I see Mr. Lockhart is still there on mute. But questions with regards to the report, again, we are just, the plan is to just receive this document. It is an overarching template, like I said, that's going to span a lot of years, but that council can draw on and leverage as we can make budget considerations for future years, including this year with regards to the inventory. I know that Chris also has in the budget package, there is a sort of a forecasted plan with regards to Parks and Rec. Obviously, that might need some updating with regards to this work, so that won't be reflected in there yet in that budget document because this is the final receipt of that strategic plan update. So we'll look, I'm sure Chris will be busy working on incorporating those into the next year's budget proposal as well. Questions with regards to the report? Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair, if I could, please. I just wondered if there's any of this parkland that you already have earmarked as surplus.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Byrne, we have no plans as of yet of surplus land.
Thank you. Other questions, members of council? Chris, one of the questions that I had with regards to the report in question itself was, I mean, obviously there needs to be a sort of a balance to, you know, the reinvestment. I mean, we're seeing the Parks and Recs budget has increased significantly over the last few years, and it's going to be trending that way as well. Obviously, as Robert alluded to in his report, the opportunity or eligibility for different funding sources is really going to help dictate some of the huge costs that we're talking about for what doesn't look like expensive park infrastructure is seemingly very expensive park infrastructure, which is pretty frustrating, but it, you know, such is the nature of the beast. So is there any sort of plan in the future for, you know, strategic procurement or bidding and tenders for how we're approaching, you know, sort of all of the work that needs to be done, or even utilizing, I know we've had a conversation with some of the issues with one of the baseball facilities that even some of our own staff were able to do some of those minor improvements and things like that. Have we started, now that we have this document, is there going to be, is it foreseeable that we'll have some more of a, maybe a strategic infusement up to some of the findings that, into how we sort of do business and approach Parks and Rec?
Through you, Mayor, to you, Mayor. Now that we have this plan, I do believe there is a lot of growth that can happen with searching out more funding. I believe there is a lot of funding out there that we could use to utilize. We do recognize that a lot of the playground equipment, it is very, very expensive. There is, we have had discussions with the city of Peterborough on collaborating around townships and having joint ventures between the townships.
Yeah, I know Mayor Leo had that with me as well, that they, even in the city of Peterborough, with the density of the population, they have a lot of, when Robert talked about optimal usage, they have a lot of facilities that are sitting empty, including some new turf facilities that they've installed with regards to the soccer programs at the different schools. Also, so that brings me to the other point that I had was that it was, when did we find out about the Kawartha Pine Ridge reinvestment at the Crestwood facilities? Because those tenants were bad when I was there, and I'm sure they were bad when the previous mayor was there too, but that's a significant investment that we have conversations with representatives from Crestwood about, but that was news to me. So is that planning to be done this year, or do we have any timeline when they might be doing that work, or is it approved, or is it just an idea at this point?
Through you, Mayor, that information Robert has brought forward, I do not have confirmation that it is for sure or not.
I can speak to that.
Perfect, Robert, I was going to you. Thank you.
Okay, great. So my information is coming through another project that I'm working on with the city of Peterborough. We're just wrapping up a job where we're developing facility strategies for every kind of outdoor facility pretty much that the city has, and tennis is one of them. And so it's through those conversations with Chelsea Gray, who works in the recreation department in the city. She has said that although I don't think it's in the capital budget for 2024, it is imminent. And the city has made the decision that instead of building new tennis courts, unless they're replacing ones that are worn out, which is part of their plan in terms of for the tennis courts, but instead of adding more to it, they want to refurbish the ones that are available to them. And so a number of the high schools have tennis facilities, some of which are in very poor condition. Kenner would be one, and Crestwood would be the other, that are particularly bad to the point where they're pretty well unusable. And so they said that they have an agreement with the board. I don't know that it's formal, but it's certainly an agreement with the board that that's a direction they're going to move in the near future. So I don't have the details of that, but it's not something that's 10 years off. It's hopefully much sooner than that, and that's going to help.
Okay, so we can expect that we'll probably move forward at some point in the next 5 years. We're not exactly sure when, but it is further along the lines in discussion from an investment standpoint, because obviously that information, I mean, that's part of the reason why we pay you, Robert, is to get that sort of information to us. So we're thankful for it, and I'm sure there's more allusions to that and more developments on that line to come as well with some of the infrastructure that the city is building. And I know there's been allusions to sort of co-partnerships or co-usage agreements with most of the county for some of the new aquatic infrastructure that the city is investing as well. So I'm sure there'll be more on that to come when those things actually come online. Other questions, members of council? Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, to Mr. Lockhart, I guess just a comment on Station Park. And I know in my past experiences working with the Mr. Hack committee and whatnot, I mean, we really looked at kind of revitalizing that area and kind of sprucing it up. And I read through the report, it kind of sounds like you want to turn it into a parking lot. So I'm just a little bit worried about kind of how that's interpreted in this one. And I know this is still guidelines, but I just kind of want to make sure that they got it how I felt about the fact that paving it and surface treatments were kind of the highlight of Station Park. Anyway, thank you.
Through you, Mayor, to Mayor Huntley. Certainly that would not be our intention. What we provided in Vision 2035 is a word picture. There's been no detailed assessment done, plan done for Station Park, but certainly the way it stands right now, it is largely a parking lot. I mean, and drive-through for the mailboxes in particular, which makes it less valuable as a park because it's difficult to mix pedestrians and park users and vehicles at the same time. So the idea would be that to hopefully improve the quality of the the vehicle intrusion, so that you in fact improve the quality of the rest of the park for those who want to use it for other purposes. So there's quite a bit of opportunity for improved turf treatment, improved access to the trailhead, improvement to the picnic pavilion. There's an opportunity to expand that park now that the new property has been purchased to the west, where the wells are. There's enough but without doing a detailed assessment of that property, it's difficult to get more specific than that. So we provided some general guidelines with the whole idea being that you want to improve the quality of that property as a park, while at the same time recognizing that it has a second function, which is provide a place for community mailboxes. And that's not typical of what you see in communities, but it is the case with Station Park. And is there a way to better manage that so that it becomes safer for park users and more attractive and not as dusty and as wet or whatever? Those are the kinds of things that we're thinking about. The whole idea would be to improve it, to make it a better park, and also accommodate the existing uses if they need to stay there.
Thank you for that, Robert. Another question, while we have you, is one of the questions I had was with regards to optimal use. Because I think that's something that I've struggled with in the conversations I've had while on council is how to determine when the optimal use dictates or justifies a further investment in additional infrastructure or facilities or fields, et cetera. Is there any sort of best practice? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, from an arena standpoint, I mean, kids are at school, so you think that sort of 4 to 7 to 9 area, that's the only time they're eligible to play during the week. So that's kind of an easy one. But that does have pressure. I know certain men's league teams have, been pushed back or asked to accommodate later schedules, and some of them have been able to sustain, but others haven't. But those are, longstanding community groups that when they're asked to, forgo in essence a sacred time, maybe that's a bit much, but for some individuals participating on those teams and they've spanned decades, lifespans, there's been a lot of history with regards to those teams in the community, and they're asked to, forego their commitment times to make room for more kids programs. And then how do you balance those sorts of conflicting needs? And even when it comes to other sorts of facilities and fields and things like that, there are entire weekends where there's no programs being run at some of our park facilities. And yet we're being told, we need a lot more of different types of infrastructure for programming. But if they're empty Saturday and Sunday, that seems like a lot of primetime hours that we're building additional capacity. So we won't be hosting anything on the weekends. Like it's a delicate balance, but while you were here, I didn't know if you had any thoughts or any sort of market data to share in that regard.
So through you, Chair, I want to speak to two things. Let's take the arena first, any arena, but yours in particular. So a couple things. One of them is that in the non-prime time hours, which is daytime, Monday to Friday, what you want to do is do everything you can to program that space. So encourage others to use it, and you can probably get your non-prime time use up. I don't know where it's at right now. Staff are updating those numbers for me right now so that we can update the background report. But some communities are able to get their non-prime time use up into the 40-50%. With an aging population, you're going to be able to do that much more easily than in the past, when you have more people available during the daytime who aren't working, who might want to participate in some sort of a skating program. In the summertime, you want to optimize that facility as much as possible when the ice is out, and staff is working hard to do that. So that's one thing, trying to optimize what you have. The second is that where you have what I call legacy bookings, where groups have had a particular time slot for years, and that may not fit perfectly with what you'd like to be able to do today as your demographics are shifting. So what communities do is they put together an allocation policy that is based on certain criteria that then you can use to measure the suitability of certain uses at certain times in the week. And once you have the criteria in place, you measure all those uses against it, and it gives you a yardstick to determine who gets what time when. Rather than being a legacy decision that, well, you've always had it, so you always will, it becomes a fairness issue where you determine what's best for the community. So those are a couple things you can do around arenas. The other one I want to talk about is playing fields, and let's just pick soccer, for example. One of the things that's very important to recognize when you're looking at a turf field, particularly one that is heavily used like your two at Maple Leaf Park, there's only so much use that a turf field can handle. And you either minimize, you optimize its use on an annual basis, or you take a field out of service every 7 to 9 years and totally refurbish it. And if you do that and you have very heavy duty maintenance program on it, you can get more weekend use of that field. But if you don't have the ability to do that, you have to be careful you don't overuse it or you will wear it out. And certainly your two fields at Maple Leaf Park are showing signs of wear and tear. Unless you're able to invest more in the maintenance of it to strengthen the turf, it's very difficult to make more use of it without ruining it. So that's the delicate balance you've got to reach. And although there aren't any hard and fast standards out there, there are some broad best practices that are similar to what I've just mentioned that you need to take a look at. So in terms of your two fields at Maple Leaf Park, they are close to optimize. The ball fields are not, but certainly the soccer fields are. And your arena, there's still more that you can do there if you're able to program your non-prime time more and deal with the allocation pressures that are on your prime time. So those are the three areas where you can look to improve, and you can do it all without spending any more capital money. It's just a matter of putting policies in place that allow you to optimize use and make it as fair as possible. I hope that helps a bit.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Councillor Byrne has a question.
Through the chair, on that type of dialogue, what's the criteria you're using right now to determine when you take the ice out of the new hockey rink here at the top of the hill and when you put it back in?
Mr. Allison?
Through here to Councillor Byrne. We put the ice in this year. We did August ice. We did half of August last year. So we have hockey camps that run in August. And this year was very successful. Our hockey camps, they ran 8, 9 in the morning till 9, 10 at night. So kids are out of school. So we're actually utilizing more ice than we do in the winter because those non-prime time hours are actually being used because the kids are out of school. We leave it in until the end of March, which is the end of minor hockey season. They run right till the end of March, and then we pull the ice out at the end of March, first week of April.
Follow-up question, Councillor Byrne?
Through the chair, yes, just because I've heard some questions asked to me, because I thought there was demand, maybe possibly even right through the summer in this area for that kind of facility, so I wasn't sure.
Chris?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Byrne. With us, we don't have the demand past April. As soon as minor hockey's done, we have a handful of hockey groups that want to run camps. And we have our ball hockey league that starts as soon as we get the ice out. We have a week to clean the floor, get the ice out, and then ball hockey runs for 10 weeks. And then we just have a couple week break and we're putting ice back in.
Thank you for that, Chris. Seeing no other questions, we are just going to be moving to receive the Parks and Rec Strategic Plan draft report. Looking for a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Nachoff, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. Thank you, Robert, for sticking with us, and thank you for all your hard work, and thank you for Chris for those answers, and safe travels, Robert. I understand you're out of the country, so all the best, and wish you the best of the new year as well.
Thank you so much, and best wishes back from me to all of you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Very good, thank you. Moving on in our agenda, we are at 10.2, report EB 2023-54, proposed telecommunications tower. Miss Ellis.
Mayor Graham, members of council, members of the public, report PEB 2023-54 is before you today with the following recommendations. Firstly, that council receive report PEB 2023-54 for information. excuse me. Secondly, that council direct planning staff to issue a statement of concurrence to Spectre Point Inc. on behalf of Rogers Communication Inc. for the construction of a 91.5 meters, 300.2 feet guide tower communication structure with the associated radio equipment cabinet on lands located at 994 Mount Pleasant Road, because the project satisfies the intent of the township's policies with regard to the siting of new telecommunication facilities. And thirdly, that the statement of concurrence include the following matters for consideration by the proponent and Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada. A, the need for the proposed tower and opportunities for co-location in the area are thoroughly explored and documented. B, the findings and recommendations of the archaeological study are accepted by the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport. Thirdly, the accepted archaeological study is circulated to the Township of Cavan-Monaghan and the Williams Treaties Territory members for review and comment prior to any on-site activity. The construction impact mitigation and management recommendations included in section 4.0 of the Arborist report prepared by Stantec and dated April 6, 2023 are implemented as conditions of approval. Next, that a sediment and erosion control plan prepared by a qualified professional is submitted to and accepted by the township prior to any on-site activities. Next, the use of tower lighting that reduces harm to migratory birds, i.e. the use of flashing lights instead of steady burning lights. And lastly, that the letter of concurrence has a 3-year expiration date. And as previously discussed, Mayor Graham, members of council, following the November 20th meeting, staff did go back and investigate a couple of the comments. There was a site visit completed by Mr. Wilkinson of this office, and you've heard from him already. We did go back to Spectre Point to ask about the possibility of having a tower that is less tall or shorter and a monopole structure. And you will see in the report, they did a photograph and superimposed a 70-meter monopole. In communication with Chris Leggett of Spectre Point, he indicated that Eorn and Rogers probably would not be interested in a monopole because they are not co-locatable. Probably would not provide the service they're looking for. So we've tried to, excuse me, we've tried to address the comments we heard at the November 20th meeting. We do take this seriously and are providing our best advice to you based on the information that we have available.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Questions, members of council from Ms. Ellis, Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, just for clarity, I thought the monopoles were able to cohabitate, but there was limited space on it because there was a limited number of ports and a limited space in the column to run cables. But I thought you could have more than one. Is that incorrect or?
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne, members of the audience and members of council. In my telephone conversation with Chris Leggett of Spectre Point, he indicated that monopoles are generally not co-locatable. And Eorn in particular are looking for facilities that are co-locatable, and it's anticipated that other providers would locate on the same structure.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Other questions, members of council? Yeah, thank you, Ms. Ellis, for taking, I know we deferred the report originally, and I think that some of the additional components or some of the refinements to the requests, like, as we've said, regardless of how we might feel about where we would like the towers to go, our jurisdiction is literally minimal in this regard. Some days I'm happy for those sorts of things and some days I'm not. And, you know, with regard, I kind of fully appreciate, you know, the passion and the, you know, the conviction and the merit to the concerns by the public. It's completely merited. However, there, in my review and my discussions and my, you know, deep dives into the world of telecommunications, there is nothing to, and really no validity to a non-concurrence vote. Just because of what concurrence means in this space. And you reiterated that to me more times than I'm sure you care to admit. But we've gone down the rabbit hole to try to figure out where our jurisdiction is and what power we can provide. And the best that we can come up with is literally the list of matters for consideration for ISED. And so I appreciate you taking the additional time and staff working and doing the further due diligence to ensure that we are trying to fulfill in our best case and our best safe scenario, all of the merits and jurisdiction that we can into this report. But, you know, it is a matter for federal jurisdiction and, you know, we are just a role player in this regard. So if no other comments, we have 3 recommendations. There are 1, 2, 3 with the 3 has A through F components. Looking for a mover and a seconder with regards to the three recommendations in the report, if there's no other questions. Seeing none, moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natshaw. Any questions with regards to the recommendations in the motions? If not, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone, for this difficult conversations on the subject, but we'll move forward as we always do. That being said, we are on to 10.3, the report Public Works 2023-26, former Millbrook Correctional Facility groundwater investigation. Mr. Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you, we have Public Works Report 2023-26. Our recommendation before you is that council receive Public Works Report 2023-26, former Millbrook Correctional Facility groundwater investigation for information. I just wanted to acknowledge that Jessica Fradley to my left and who is our water wastewater technician has worked very closely with Cameron McDougall, who is a project manager with Cambian on this report. And Cameron has come on to replace Mike Bingham, who has historically been with us presenting this report. Just in the body of the report, I wanted to note to council that we have had a number of players change in this. At the ministry, our contact has retired, so we've reached out to David Bradley, the district manager, and we're looking for a follow-up meeting in early 2024 to discuss the ongoing requirements of on the property for testing. The recommendations before you are that the testing continue on the IO property on a quarterly basis. That came forward from our peer review consultant and is supported by us. Also, I would like to note that there has been no indication of contamination at our municipal wells. That's been tested, and there has been nothing show up at our municipal wells throughout the number of years that we've been doing this. We have before you the report with the original report from GHD, who is the consultant for IO, and of course our peer review comments from Cameron, who's with us today, that can speak to the subject matter. And it's just with his comments regarding what we would look forward to from GHD and the IO property going forward. At this point, the testing continues, and that continues at our municipal wells, and it continues on the IO property, and we look forward to the meeting with ministry staff in early 2024. So the report is before you for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. So this is a continuation of the ongoing effort with regards to it, but it sounds as though we haven't been able to schedule the meeting due to some staffing changes, so we will be having that meeting in early in the new year. Questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, just to say, I had a lot of questions, but they're going to be answered in the future at another more opportune time, so I won't bring them up today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Byrne. Other questions? If not, we'll look for a motion to receive the report for information. Councilor Byrne, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. Moving on, thank you for joining us as well, Cameron. Sorry we didn't need you today. Moving on, 10.4, report Public Works recommended updates to traffic and parking bylaw number 2022-65. Drew Hutchison is here today to talk to us about it. Drew, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council. Before you, we have Public Works Report 2023-27 with recommendations regarding updates to the traffic and parking bylaw number 2022-65. The recommendations before you are as followed. Recommendation 1 is that council approve the speed limit reduction request for Wilson Line, reducing the speed limit from 80 kilometers an hour to 60 kilometers an hour between 1,100 meters west of County Road 10 to the westerly limit. Recommendation 2 is that council receive the speed limit reduction request for Larmer Line between County Road 28 and County Road 10 and Cedar Valley Road between County Road 28 and Hutchison Drive as information as staff continue to monitor traffic data in these locations. Recommendation 3 is that council approve the updated traffic and parking bylaw number 2023-62, being a bylaw to regulate traffic and parking within the limits of the Township of Cabot-Monaghan and repeal the previous traffic and parking bylaw number 2022-65 in the entirely. Additionally, staff have brought this report, Public Works Report 2023-20 to council September 18th, 2023. Council motion to defer the report until a later date to allow staff time to consider the requests for updates on Hayes Line. At this time, staff are still waiting a response from the staff at the City of Kawartha Lakes regarding updates to Hayes Line. And we felt it was necessary to bring this report back to council before the end of the year. Once we are able to reconnect with the staff at the City of Kawartha Lakes and gather more information, we will bring that forward in a following a report in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Drew. Questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne, then Deputy Mayor Huntley.
I'm jumping queue. Through you, Chair, to Mr. Hodgson. With regard to Larmer specifically, I know we just resurfaced that road, and I know that we had in the past, we resurfaced some of these roads, and that seems to be when these speed complaints or requests for lower speed limits come in. Do you think potentially in the future, as we go forward, resurfacing roads, maybe we do kind of a sample check with the with our machine to kind of get the average speeds going across them before we do the work and then after the work, and see where there's a correlation there between the the work we do on the roads and the average speeds traveled on them, just to kind of get us a little bit more information when these requests come in for the speed reductions, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Huntley. That's a great point. It's something we have started doing the last couple of years, is gathering more traffic volumes on a yearly basis for all of our roads in the township, or as many as we can. We do have a couple machines, as you know, the radar board that collects data, as well as the ATR, which is a tube-based tracking system. And we are trying to gain more, or have more data, so when we do get these requests, we can process them in a timely manner, not necessarily waiting for the request to come in and then going to collect the data. So that is a great point. Thank you.
Through the chair, a couple of points. So item number 1, Wilson Line, it's a dead end road. Used lowered the speed limit about 1.5 years ago. It's already been posted, has been for a long while. As for Cedar Valley Road, it's not a through road. It's mostly local traffic. It's a crappy piece of road, very pleasant to drive on. The thing I have a problem with, and was alluded to here through Deputy Mayor Ryan, was the fact that these data collection points you have, I don't have any time of day that these high speeds jar the average somewhat, right? So I don't really have a big problem with somebody driving down a backside road a little over the speed limit at the 3 o'clock in the morning threshold. But I wish there was more emphasis put on the fact that we spend a lot of taxpayers' money improving the roads to move traffic. It's not a dog park. It's not it's for traffic. And the emphasis should stay with that. To the Deputy Mayor's point, every time we improve the road after years of complaining that the road's no good, the next complaint is it's going too fast. And I just see that as counterproductive. The epidemic there that shut everything down, got people used to walking on the road and getting out for exercise. That's fine, not a problem. It's a matter of sharing the roads. We put up signs for tractors and farm vehicles to share the road. It's the same thing should be considered when it comes to pedestrians or bicycles. So yes, I would like to know if there's any time data that tells me that these so-called speeders are not in the middle of the morning where it's really not a critical matter or not. Thank you.
Drew.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Byrne. We do get the time of day. It's broken down through the time of day when we do pull the data from our machines. When we are reviewing the data, we do work on an 85th percentile, which eliminates all outliers. It eliminates the irregular high speeds, whether it be early in the morning or even throughout the day. And it also eliminates the speeds that are way below the average. So we do all of our studies based off the 85th percentile, which we believe is most accurate for the volumes of traffic going on these roads. Thank you.
So in addition, so on that same subject, if you, in the subsequent report after the current report where it's outlined, one of the questions I had was with regards to Wilson Line, you know, from the vehicle count and the average speed, we're seeing a below actual, you know, the current traffic speeds. If I'm reading the graph correctly, that's kind of what I'm asking. If we see average speed and it's actually below the requested speed limit, it seems as though the users of the road are accommodating by what's sort of the dictated conditions or topography, whatever circumstance of the reality that predicts or determines their behavior. So if they're already going at a speed that's below or on average on the 85th percentile, like you said, if they're already going a speed below what we're proposing, regardless of the fact that it's already currently higher, but I think we should address Councillor Burns' point just to confirm that it is 80 versus, or if this area is 80, or if there are other elements. I think that I just want to make sure that's clarified. But then I also just want to understand the catalyst for reducing the speed when the speed in this one case seems to not be the issue. It's that the signage is almost not caught up with the usage in a way, and I'm not sure that is a merited expense, but maybe either Mr. Hancock or Mr. Hutchison could provide some clarity on that, and to Mr. Burns or Councillor Burns' earlier comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the rest of council. Our current bylaw, the first 1,100 meters of Wilson Line is regulated at a 60 kilometers an hour speed limit. Beyond that first 1,100 meters, it currently is an 80 kilometers an hour speed limit. In previous years, there were signage updates, and when our staff was in the field, it did go a little bit further beyond the first 1,100 meters. So that's why we're bringing this report forward. We would like to make sure that what we have in the field is reflected in our bylaw and have it set so the whole length of road is at the 60 kilometers an hour speed limit. If Mr. Hancock would like to add any more, I'll pass it over.
Just to clarify then, Drew, there was a speed adjustment to a smaller portion of this road, but what we're proposing in this existing report or the current report is an extension of that adjustment to the entire westerly limit of the road. Is that correct?
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Councillor Edgerton.
To you, Mr. Mayor, there to Drew. It doesn't matter what we set the speed limits at. Some people will obey them and some people won't. So why inconvenience the people that want to drive the 80 clicks and not cause any problems for the few people who want to drive erratically, because we're never going to stop them with a speed limit sign. So maybe we need more enforcement for that, to do that. Thank you.
Questions, Councillor Natchoff?
Thank you, Chair, through you. Just two questions just of clarity. Drew, for Schedule D for restricted parking. So just to confirm, this is adding Hayes Street, Distillery Street, Center Street, and Union Street to the pre-existing streets that have restricted parking for 2 hours, thusly King Street. So this is new. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Natchoff. In this current bylaw, there is no updates to any of the restricted parking schedules. These schedules are reflected what has been laid out in the past. So at this time, the only change we have would be reflecting the speed limit reduction on Wilson Line from 80 kilometers an hour to 60 kilometers an hour from the section specified in the report of 1,100 meters west of County Road 10 to the westerly limit. But that at this time, this is the only change to the bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councilor Byrne?
Just as a point of interest for myself, a while back, there was a speed detect portable unit placed just north of Cavan downtown on the County Road 10, and it was above the 60-kilometer range, still in the 80-kilometer range. I'm just curious. I'm guessing that was our operation, and I didn't know whether you were trying to detect people doing under 60 that were still in an 80-kilometer zone, or what the reasoning was for where that unit was positioned, if you remember what I was referring to.
I believe that was the county unit, Drew, but yeah, just with regards to being on county, I know they're doing a lot of analysis with regards to the impact of growth in the areas on the county roads. So they have county has their own separate unit, as well as we have access to one through Peterborough Police Services, as well as our own. So it could be any one of those three at a given time, but I think Drew's just confirmed that it was in fact the county. So just to clarify. Okay, perfect. Other questions? Okay, so seeing none, I guess so there's some interrelation between recommendation 1 and 3, because if we're not going to endorse 1, then you can't endorse 3. So why don't we get number 2 out of the way, because it is just to continue to monitor Farmer Line with regards to the implications, as Deputy Mayor Huntley kind of alluded to in his comment. Any issues with recommendation number 2? If not, look for a mover and a seconder for that recommendation. Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor. That is approved. With regards to recommendation 1, let's go there first, and then because that will inform recommendation 3. Does anyone feel that they either want to move it forward, that the remainder of that line of Wilson Line be adjusted to address or be consistent with the continue or the previously adjusted section, or something else? Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, I'm pretty sure, because I've driven it, that the signage is all the way up to where the road turns into an unassumed road. And I don't think there's any problem with speeding up that big hill on the assumed road. So if I'm wrong, I apologize, but I don't have a problem with number 1 the way it stands right now.
Mr. Hancock, you want to clarify?
Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Byrne, I believe the signage is incorrect in the field. And I think that's been discussed, that it's further than the 1,100 meters. I'm not sure that it goes up totally to the west limit of Wilson Line, but the request came from the one or two of the houses on the end of Wilson Line. And the question before you is that you have the section that's County Road 10 to 1,100 meters west is at 60, takes you over that hill in the area, and the request from the residents at the end is why not make it 60 to the end of it. The signage will be corrected to wherever council decides on the bylaw. If it's incorrect in the field, we'll correct that.
Okay, do you have another follow-up comment, Jerry?
Please, through that chair. Yeah, so that brings me back to what I was talking about earlier, and I don't care either way with the signage. But the fact is, it's a dead end road, and a couple of people are complaining basically about their neighbors. There used to be some real traffic up there back in the day when the Dude Ranch was there. That doesn't exist anymore. It's a private property. The guy holds a couple of functions a year, maybe. But I just get back to this idea of Cedar Valley Road and some of these places where these people are actually complaining about their neighbors, and they don't realize when they get in their car and drive down the road into some other area that somebody else is looking out their front window saying they're speeding in their zone. So just moving forward, I'd like the emphasis to be put on moving traffic.
Councilor Edgerton?
Do you, Mr. Mayor, this year, number 1 here, I can't really support it, changing dropping down the speed limits at all. I think we should leave them the way they are.
So I'll take that as a motion, Councilor Edgerton, because we are trying to discuss. So there's a motion on the floor with regards to not supporting recommendation number one. And then obviously that will have implications, Ms. Page, with regards to number three, just so we're not getting ahead of ourselves. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Byrne? Any clarification? So we're just not doing that road as the motion currently stands. Any clarifications? Everyone's aware? Okay, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? Of the motion that Councillor Nelson just proposed. Sorry, that's why I asked. The motion is to not adjust from 80 to 60, the remainder of Wilson line. So Councillor Edgerton has made the motion. Councillor Byrne has seconded the motion. Now all of us must vote. Okay, all in favor of the motion? That is approved. Very good. So now we've not supported that recommendation. Is there any language in the recommendation number three, Ms. Page, that needs to be adjusted?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to, I would say, Mr. Hutchison or Mr. Hancock, I would imagine we're not going to be able to bring the bylaw forward today because, so the bylaw will be brought forward at the next council meeting.
Very good. So we'll just receive the remainder of the presentation in addition to approving recommendation 2 in the report and then receiving the presentation, or sorry, receiving the report for information.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the cleanest way to do the motion is number 1, that council not support the speed limit reduction. Number 2, as you already voted, and then number 3, that council direct staff to report back or to provide the updated bylaw at the next council meeting.
Sorry, my mic's not on. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you, gentlemen, for the conversation. Moving on, we are at 10.5 in the report. Corporate Services, Cavan-Monaghan Accessibility Advisory Committee, Ms. Page.
Thank you, Mayor Graham. To yourself and the rest of council, before you is Corporate Services Report 2023-13 with the recommendation that council receive the report for information. At the conclusion of the October meeting, staff did advertise to fill the vacancy for the Accessibility Advisory Committee. One of those requirements is that the majority of the committee members are persons with disability. To date, staff have not received enough applications that will fulfill this requirement. I did touch on it at the last meeting, so I do know Councillor Natchoff as well as other people are trying to recruit additional members, but at this time, we do not have enough to fulfill the complement.
Okay, so we'll be just continuing that recruitment effort with regards to the appropriate individuals to augment or form the committee, I guess. And then once that is, it will come before council, just as it has been in the past, to like any committee of council. And closed, we'll have the appointment conversation and then we'll come out with that. So hopefully continue thanks for the previous recommendations, Councillor Natchoff, and I'm sure if anyone else is aware of individuals for the committee that we should be casting the net as far and wide as possible so that we can establish it because it is a legislative requirement. So we're just receiving a question, Deputy Mayor Huntley, and then Councillor Byrne.
Through you, Chair. So Ms. Page, is there a way for us to change what is the makeup of that committee, or is that makeup legislative?
To Mayor Graham, to Deputy Mayor Huntley, that is a legislative requirement.
Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair, on page 655 of that report, it mentions by name priority when it's talking about applications. Could I get some clarity on what that actually means, please?
Ms. Page?
I'm not 100% sure what you're talking about. Can we turn to page 655? You're jumping reports, Councillor Byrne.
That's okay.
So we'll get to that one on the next report from Miss Carly DeKalick. Okay, that being said, we're just receiving this report for information. Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. 10.6, much anticipated. Carly, to you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, and to the rest of council, before you is report CAO 2023-07, Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan Update. Now, the recommendations are that council receive report CAO 2023-07, Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan Update for information, and that council receive the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan Update for information. So we have the report and then we have the update. This is coming out of a legislative requirement back in 2022. There was a change made through the Police Servicing Board Act, and that required municipalities to establish a collaborative community safety wellbeing plan. This would have been with our previous council, so this may look new to you. The intention of the update is that using the plan as a guiding tool, we want to bring before you an annual update, checking in and letting you know all of the great things that the township and departments have done that go to support that bigger plan. So if you do have any questions, I'm here.
I think we can anticipate one question, if you want. Can you provide clarity with regards to the by name component that Councilor Byrne requested?
Could you please just repeat the question while we have the page? Thank you.
So it talks to by name for the waiting list. I'm sorry, I was.
Stop. In regards to the by name priority list, there are a number of so there are lists of individuals that are requiring special treatment. And so that the ability or the prevalence of people being on that list or the reduction in people being on that list would be an indicator for success and improvement. So that's what they're talking about. There are by name priority lists with regards to eligibility for certain programs or funding, whether it's rent supplements or things of that nature. So the existence or the grandeur of that list or the reduction in that list could be an indication of improved health or decreased health or diminished health, I guess is kind of how I would interpret that. But Carly, maybe you want to provide more clarity.
Yes, thank you. That is a great question. So the page 655, where you've referenced, this is part of the actual community safety wellbeing plan. In there is a list of goals and targets. And it's important to keep in mind that this plan is based on the approach that it's a collaborative, holistic approach. So these are all targets. And so we have done our best as staff to try to pick what indicators of success for each of these 4 key priorities for the township would look like. And with our annual updates, we really won't be able to see true measures of success and report on that until about years 3 to 5.
Yeah, and the by name, this specific goal and section, as you can see, elaborates towards housing, and the by name priority list is primarily focused on homelessness. So if you're on a list with regards to homelessness, you could have certain levels of acuity for difficulties being housed or ease of being housed, whether it's, single parent or, or someone with existing mental health conditions that would be harder to house. That is a comprehensive list of the homeless population, and by name priority as well, the priority by which they can be housed in that regard. Follow up, Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, on that same page, it references building permits and planning applications. Has that started to see a turnaround, or is that going to be 3 or 4 years off to see any kind of results there?
Thank you. Unfortunately, I am not able to speak to the building and planning department. Mr. Connolly is with us if he would like to answer that question.
Through your worship, to council and specifically Councilor Byrne. So yes, we can certainly provide that. I think in my year-end summary with respect to building activity, I will look at the idea of number of permits, give some historical information, and also where we have gone in terms of time frame of actual turnaround times in those permits.
Yeah, and keeping in mind, some of these goals vary between municipality to municipality. I mean, we try to collectively create a plan to save cost efficiencies across the 3 municipalities that we're participating in. But each of us have our own different obstacles or circumstances that we find ourselves in. I know that in Norwood and OSM, the turnaround time for planning applications, obviously being now under the county OP, is completely different than a township of the Monaghan application because of the various both capacity issues, but also grandeur and number of applications being received for 7 municipalities versus our 1. Anyways, other questions, members of council, with regards to the report? If not, there's 2 recommendations before us. One, that we receive the community plan update, and then we also receive the well-being plan update for information. Any other questions? Moving those 2 recommendations, Councilor Byrne, Councilor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. Thank you very much, gentlemen and Carly, for that report. 10.7 CAO report and capital status. Ms. Hurley, anything to report?
Through you, Mayor, no, there isn't. It's in front of you. If you have any questions, we're here to help answer those questions. As you know, when we get into our capital projects, as we move forward through the budget process, those will be changed once council does approve the budget for 2024.
Thank you for that, Ms. Hurley. If there are no questions for Ms. Hurley at this time, we are just receiving the report for information. Moved by Councillor Natchop, seconded by Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Council and committee verbal reports. Does anyone have a verbal report from any committees? Seeing none. I will just provide a few reports. So the library committee actually has our next meeting tomorrow night. But in addition, we've had a number of local events. Obviously, the majority of council were, I think all of us were in attendance for the parade, and then we also had the firefighter banquet in the evening as well. So it was a busy weekend last Saturday in the township, but it's nice to see council well represented and nice to see so many members of the community. And I think, I don't know if with the rest of council, but I got a lot of positive reinforcements about the parade this year. The floats were fantastic, and I just want to give kudos to council staff and everyone for all the hard work and pulling that event together. Everyone was, it was many people responded to me that it was the best parade they've seen in years. And obviously the weather was a very helpful component of that too. So thanks to everyone who pulled that together. And obviously the firefighter banquet was very important. It's great to see so many young people coming onto the fire service and starting to receive their accreditations. And some of them have already been at the fire service for 5 years, and I don't think they're old enough to drive, some of them, and by the looks of them, but maybe that's just me getting older. But great to recognize those individuals for all of their great service to our community. If there's no other comments or questions, Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair, I was hoping you might tell me and the public who won the float.
That's an excellent question that I do not have the answer to. Does anyone of Ms. Hurley?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to council, Ms. Hurley does not have that answer. What Ms. Hurley can advise you is Ms. Ayed is actually looking after that, and she's on holidays this week. So once she comes back, I'm sure that there'll be a notice and it'll be on our website and in social media as well.
Be a hotly contested year, no doubt, based on that. So if not, we can look for a motion to receive those council committee verbal reports for information. Councillor Byrne, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. There is no general business. There is no correspondence for information. There is no correspondence for action. I will now read the bylaws. Only the one, right, because that one was correct. So that bylaw number 2023-85 being a bylaw to provide for licensing and registration of dogs and for the prohibiting or regulating at the running at large of dogs be read a first, second, and third time signed by the mayor and the clerk and the corporate seal attached thereto on this 18th day of December. Moved by Councillor Edgerton, Councillor Natchop, all in favor. That is approved. There is no unfinished business. Any notices of motion? Seeing none. The confirming bylaw, that bylaw number 2023-86 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held December 18th, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time past this 18th day of December, signed by the mayor and the clerk and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Byrne, all in favor. That is approved. Lastly, motion to adjourn this last meeting of 2023. Councillor Natchop, Councillor Edgerton, all in favor. That is approved. Thank you very much, gentlemen. There are a number of upcoming events that I'll read now. The Cabin-Monaghan Library Board meeting is tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at the Millbrook branch. Our next regular council meeting is Monday, January 15th at 1 p.m. in the council chambers. The Municipal Revitalization and Heritage Advisory Committee meets Thursday, January 18th at 9 a.m. Motor Valley Trails Advisory Committee meeting meets Monday, January 22nd at 4 p.m. And we have our special council budget meeting Thursday, January 25th at 1 p.m. and followed by that evening special budget meeting again on the same January 25th at 6 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Hope everyone has a safe and happy holiday.